Imagine you're in your car driving home from work and you just tuned into this community conversation.
Yeah, hopefully you're not watching while driving, but we'll go ahead and kick things off here. Welcome to those joining us. This is our 4th installment of the community conversation. Looking forward to chatting with Murray today and having you guys chat with him as well. Our next conversation will take place in October. Keep an eye out for a reminder on that. We'll have Kathy Fernandez of Next Gen on for that. So just a few kind of housekeeping items just to knock out here before we get started, and then we'll get right into it. This conversation is taking place on September 16th at 4:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. The intended audience is for FPA members and partners, and the opinions shared by those on the call do not reflect that of their employers. Any discussion on financial planning is general in nature and should not be taken as financial advice. With that being said, looking forward to the conversation today with Murray. Give us a little bit of taste of what's ahead for Prequel and the showcase happening at the end of the month on Tuesday, September 29th. And our goal here at the FPA is always to come forward with fresh ideas and fresh perspective, and really to be at the heart and the core of your life as a financial planner from the day you realize that's what your ambition is to the day that you hang it up. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and kind of jump right into things here. We have Murray Smith, our FPA chapter president, on with us today, and one of the speakers I'm definitely looking forward to here at the end of the month. Murray, I thought we'd just kind of, do some fun kind of conversation here to open it up, and then we'll get more into some prepared remarks that I had for you and for those on the call as well. So just love to hear kind of what you're working on right now, what's, keeping you sane here in this virtual world, this COVID environment.
Thanks, Aaron. So I see some folks here. Hi, Michael. I know that you sent me out an email, so I appreciate you being here. A few others. I think, Ted, you were on, I believe, you were on our call with Craig, and then immediately, or the call that Craig moderated, and I think I saw you there with some questions, etc., and then you joined chapter shortly thereafter. Is that accurate? And he's typing. So, and then we, welcome Craig and Colleen. I'm happy to see some, yeah, there it goes. Yes, so happy to see you here. And then some other faces. One name for sure that I recognize, and that's Kathy's, but I don't think we've met. And then Mary, I'm not sure if we've met either, but welcome and thank you for coming here today. And oh, and Ken, I can't forget Ken. I see your name so often on the Hubbles that it's unfortunately I glossed over it here. So that was a great question, Aaron. Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to frame it. What's keeping me sane? Because between all the what I think is great work that we're doing on the board and with the FPA, that's certainly keeping me insane. And then same with work. It's building a brand a department, a financial planning department is no short order. So those two things keep me insane. But you see my little that's not a little guitar. That's actually a forced perspective, I think they call that. So that's an actual real guitar. So I have actually been picking that up more and more. Hence why it's a little bit more front and center in my office. It's a great place for me to go and do a little plucking, a little strumming, and I have played before in a band, but I am not a singer. But at least I can sing here and not offend anybody. So that's keeping me busy, or helped me keep sane. My son and wife as well, 6-year-old at home. So he needs. We all need a break, and so we're doing a lot of fun stuff around the house together. So that's great. And then one of the things that I've always been interested in is home automation and making my home smarter, so to speak, and then computer programming. I'm self-taught computer programmer, so I found something recently that I can mesh those two things together, and I'm working on some home automation stuff that's really cool. So those three things are keeping me sane: guitar and computer programming and family, not necessarily in that order.
Is this like
There
if
you
you
go.
clap your hands, the lights go on and off?
Yes. Well, I can ask Siri to open my garage, or I could until I lost my other controller. But anyway, yeah. So lots of neat commands. Lots of what's really neat is you can bring in a lot of data. So I'm bringing in like moon phases and sunsets and all the rest of that kind of stuff. So you can put all that and you can do triggers based on that. You know, when your lights come on or whatever. And so yeah, based on weather. Did it rain or whatever? So if that kind of information comes in, you can do other things, turn off your sprinkler and all the rest, but it's all fully automated. So.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we have the Elon Musk here of the FPA of Greater Phoenix among us, so I feel privileged. And I got to ask too, I know you're big into gardening as well. Are you doing a lot of smart technology with sprinklers and all that, or no? How's that working out? Did everything survive the last few storms here?
No, this has been a bad year. I almost destroyed our banana. And we've had our banana tree, or trees as it is. And we have not a lot of things survived this year. It's been a real hot one. But our pomegranate tree is doing well, and we might have a second season of figs. So we'll keep our fingers crossed, but we're getting ready for fall planting, and hopefully the weather cooperates this time around.
Okay.
Pomegranates, that's awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
What a great thing. I mean, if they're actually like the full fruit and they ripen nicely and
yeah, we'll see how they go. Now they're really small, right? They're small. They fit in your hand, not these big ones, which makes me wonder what hormones we're getting in some of these other ones. But I went online to find out when they ripen, because we're all learning this stuff. Thanks, Ted. Good thing. And he had a store-bought one that was massive, and then he had right off the tree from Utah, and it was smaller. So I feel comfortable that we're growing the right things.
Good. I'm glad to hear you got some exotic, fruits that you're growing out here in the deserts of Arizona. So well done.
Yes.
Perfect. Any other questions from those on the line here before we kind of get into a few more kind of questions in regards to what Murray hopes to cover with us here at Month End?
I'd love to hear someone ask him something really obscure. Totally out there.
I do want to ask something, but I don't think it's that obscure. I would like just a really high level brief explanation of when you were actually doing branding as that was like your primary business. Like, just give us like a little overview of that. I know you've told me that story, but it's been over 5 minutes, so I don't remember anymore.
Well, I need to back into this a little bit, but so I've always been in the financial kind of world. That's where I started. So I've got a degree in economics, and I've got a graduate degree in economics, a Master of Arts in economics from the U of A, which in this state usually means something different. But no, I did not go to Arizona. I went to Alberta.
Bear down.
Because yes, I'm from Canada. So I went there, got that. I worked for the Provincial Treasury Department on what they call a heritage fund. It's similar to the Alaska Permanent Fund, if you're familiar, but it's basically oil royalties that the government was taking care of. So I did a lot of asset allocation, income forecasting, debt reporting, and a bunch of that. So I'm living in Edmonton and working for the government, which was part of the plan. But then I found a job online, or not online, from my former summer student employment with Molson Brewery in Vancouver, Canada. So leave Edmonton, cold, dreary, and work for the government, or move to Vancouver, temperate, beautiful city, lots to do, multicultural, and so after long deliberation, I said, yeah, I'll go work for Molson in the marketing department in Vancouver. So yeah, so that's where I spend my time. So I went in as an analyst, given my background, and then gravitated towards the brand management. So that's how I got into this, and that's where I got the the marketing side of things, because that wasn't where I started. And great to learn there. It's we're gonna, you know, I know that Aaron's got some things that he wants to ask. So if he doesn't, I'm gonna circle back, because there are some things that I want to tell you about from my experience. But I wanted to give you that background. That's how I got into the marketing side.
Thank you.
Perfect. And what kind of drew you in, Murray, as far as making that big shift? Was it just, you know, the interest of, you know, expanding upon what was being done already on that side?
Sorry, I said I missed the first part.
Yeah, I was just curious on, you know, obviously a big step going kind of from the analyst background to the branding side, the marketing side. What kind of, you know, got you extremely interested in that and kind of prompted you to make that big switch there?
Well, and it's been, I mean, that's the heart of that company, right? I mean, yes, there is
Sure.
Manufacturing, et cetera, but most companies, you know, marketing sales will have a headbutt, and they'll say who's more important. But to be the analyst in the marketing department is, you know, is a little fish in the big pond, and you know, I have more aspiration to do other things. What I found out, and I've come to realize long after the fact, though, is that it took me a while to figure out to remove myself from the numbers and the logic and the facts, factual stuff. While there is an element of that in marketing and branding, it isn't all of it. There's a definite art component to the science of branding, and so that was, I've come to realize that, you know, too late, but not too late, but too late for my roles back then. So, but it was great working for a big national company with lots of presence, with big budgets. Was great.
Was there free beer involved too, or?
Yes, there was.
No. Okay, that's a win.
48 beers a month, I think it was. And then
Isn't that when you go like you betcha or something, some Canadian? Murray, do you think it's harder for financial planners who tend to be analytical and numbers oriented to do what you just did, to actually remove themselves from the analytical side of branding and like look at the heart and the feeling and the empathy side? Is that a fair comparison?
And I'll probably answer this all the time. I probably should have had two cards, yes and no, because I think those financial planners that have a deep emotional connection with their clients would be more able to do that. Those that are more into the numbers and play with the software and you know, build models and do the rest, yeah, probably not as much. So yeah, I'd answer that yes and no, for sure.
And Murray, how would you just kind of define branding? You know, a lot of times we think, you know, shooting T-shirts at people, you know, with a T-shirt gun, but how would you kind of define that big picture and, you know, what kind of impact that has on a business as well?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I actually have, I wrote down some thoughts around branding as I'm working out the workshop as well and fine tuning that. But branding to me is the intellectual exercise, creating and crafting a meaningful concept or strategy that emotionally connects everybody that's associated with the brand or the company or what have you. So it's kind of everybody. Oh, I mean, no disrespect, but it seems that branding, given our current embarrassment, is on the rope. So is that was that sorry, that was Ted, right? I think so. Are you saying the FDA national or the chapter, or just maybe a little context there, Ted?
I think it might be political. Boy, that's diving into the deep end here. That might
be a slippery slope.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, Ted.
That is what I look at it. Branding is, and the brand is the foundation, right? So the rest, like you said, shooting T-shirts. What's going to be on that T-shirt, or why were you even doing that shooting of the T-shirt in the first place? all it stems from the purposeful and thoughtful thinking that went in behind the strategy. Sometimes not. Sometimes it's just you got to shoot a T-shirt out of a gun. But and then the brand is the result of that process, right? And it's the practical, hands-on pieces, the touches, experiences, those kinds of things. And to me, and what a lot of people might not realize, and it's and I'd be interested if any of you have an opinion on this, but the brand strategy is what links everything. So in the traditional world of marketing and brand management, you've got a creative firm, an advertising firm, copywriters, graphic designers, website designers now, and digital content people, and all the rest of this kind of stuff. Well, how do you manage all that? And how do you make sure that the message is connected and consistent and concise? Well, you have to have a very solid foundation, and that's what brand strategy does. Then if you can imagine, you take our brand strategy, which you would see if you came to my workshop on the 29th, is very concise. We can communicate on one page exactly what it is that we're trying to accomplish, what we're promising to our audience, and how we might be going about doing that. So it makes it much easier when you're having conversations with these folks or anybody that if they are going to be your communications person or they're going to be working with you on your brand, you have that concise strategy, then you're going to be in good shape. Yeah, so I mean that's where I really found the difference. I didn't understand branding until I got there. I didn't do any of it until I got to Molson. But to be able to see, oh boy, yeah, I got to communicate what it is that I want to try to do with my creative director or my promotions guy or events person. That's what you give them, this one pager, and already now they know where to go. And now their job is narrowed, and now they can really use their expertise. And instead of trying to figure out where you want to go, you've already done that for them. Now they can narrow it down and really hone their skills, or use their honed skills to get the best thing for you.
Is the brand more about you and describing you and your service and your persona, or is it more about the person you want to communicate it to? Is it from their perspective? Like, which perspective do you take?
Well, and that's why it's a strategy, right? So we'll talk more about this at the workshop, but there's like an essence, right? If you could give yourself 2 words or 1 word better to describe yourself, that's the hardest one. That's really tough. But if you can do that, then that's great. Volvo safety, right? The rest of it is ancillary. I mean, that's kind of an example.
St. Vincent de Paul was all about dignity.
Sure, exactly. But then you broaden it out from there. So then you position yourself how you want to be positioned to differentiate yourself from your competition. And that's a positioning statement, right? And then what you do is you have a brand promise that says, every touch that you have with me, or the brand, or the service, or whatever, this is what we promise. And that's the measuring stick then that your consumer, your supplier, your employee, whoever, then can measure you against. And that's how you build that equity. Because if you don't have anything in the background, all your touches, what do they do for you? They don't do anything. They might generate sales, yes, but brand equity, which is something else we'll talk about, that's yeah, it's that's right. Sorry.
Has anybody here done any of that? Like, yeah. Do they have an essence or a brand? Have you guys ever looked at this way before?
Does it make any sense?
Bullshit.
I think it's a great idea. You know, when I was kind of changing within the financial planning industry, Murray, and I wanted more of that, you know, the heartfelt type of name for my company. So I thought, loved words, and I loved this one woman who did greeting cards. So I called her directly and just asked if she did any kind of consulting for businesses, which she did, and she worked with me. It was fascinating the way she went about things, because she You should send me an email. What's on your desk right now? You know,
Right.
what's pinned up? What pictures do you have? You know, to really get to know who I was. And so it was a lot of fun because we ended up with PATH, Financial Strategies. And PATH is an acronym for Planning at the Heart.
Oh,
And it was
Nice.
it was me. You know, when I saw it, I thought that's what I want to do. That's how it is. So it's I like what you're saying about it's the whole vision and the whole, you know, who you are as a person, and it's the right side and left side of the brain that you can bring into the brand.
That's right. That's right. And Ted, are you going to jump back in with your comment? But Mary, and that's just it. And I think there's part of this is, oh yes, of course, when branding is used to deceive, that's a shame. Oh, sorry, that's Melissa. Sorry, yeah, I mean, for sure. But this is the kind of thinking, right, that goes in behind, because now that you know what's at the heart of you, and it's heart, right now, you know, would you events or what have you might be a whole lot different. You know, what's your customer appreciation if you have one event? Well, it should be consistent with that messaging, right? So maybe it is something, maybe and if you're, I'm not saying doing it right, but, and I don't know if this is your business, but I'm just taking from what you just said to say, well, you would then probably attract those kinds of clients, right? That have a heart, right? So and probably possibly charitable. So it probably will help you frame and build your practice, and that's that niche that everybody talks about. And then, you know, a typical customer service event or client appreciation event or whatever may actually be going to serve at a charity or something, right? And as part of that, which is then very consistent with your brand.
People can self-select, right? I mean, you know, if you're totally turned off by all that fuzzy stuff, then you're just like, I'm not going to go see Mary, you know?
That's right. And again, it
It's
doesn't.
all, you know, namby-pamby, whatever, right? But yeah, but the people who where it really resonates, then you're attracted to it. And I think, Murray, when you say that's how you measure, I mean, I think qualitative metrics period are really hard. Like for my clients, is just trying to come up with the right metrics. Do they know if they're accomplishing what they need to do? And that, you know, having that qualitative measurement, the brand promise, I never really thought about it that way. That's really glad you brought that up. I mean, that is how somebody can measure. And did I really experience what you promised me I was going to experience? Yeah. That's awesome.
And I do want to make a point here because I know, and you know, there was some because I mean, Ted, I felt the same way. Like because I was a numbers guy, economist, and all the rest. You know, I thought all this left side of the brain, get out of there. Is it the left? Anyway, but the emotional connection doesn't have to be touchy-feely. It can be emotional, right? Like, and I don't know if this is the case, but Ferrari, you can still have an emotional without touchy-feely. Ferrari might be all about the speed and the prestige and I mean, that's not necessarily touchy-feely. It can be, though, with, you know, heartfelt financial planning. But it doesn't, a brand doesn't have to be touchy-feely to have an emotional connection.
Yeah. And then real quick, Mary, go ahead, Melissa.
I was just thinking, when I look at Kathy and her experience with Kathy and Stephen Barnes and Barnes Financial, and then the move to Versant, like your initial face to the world was your name, your face. It was your credibility. It was trust and credibility, and just it was you. It was synonymous. And then when you move to like a Versant, where there's a name of a firm and it's branded differently, and it's an organization that isn't as directly connected to the names of the professionals. I mean, that's when I look at this conversation, the promise inherent when it's you and your name, it's some element of credibility or integrity. When you move it to a firm, when you're trying to expand it or grow it or bring in other people, that's a huge shift to thinking, well, what does this team mean, or what does this entity mean? I don't know, you got to experience that like overnight kind of thing, the different worlds. I don't know if that struck you at that point or looking back.
Yeah, I really think trust was the equity in that whole transition, because there was no way I could control the brand. I mean, we could for the 25, 30 years we had our business, but then when that went poof, it was trust that carried us through. So I guess trust was the brand. Trust was the promise for sure. So I like that promise idea. So.
Yeah, yeah, and Ted brings up a good point there. I just saw, because I only get the ... message, but yeah, branding is kind of like insurance, or it can have a bad connotation to some folks, right? And branding, and that's what Ted brought up, because it is. I mean, and that's what I struggle with, because I think the other comment there that you had, Ted, was, you know, Melissa had said too, with, you know, when it's used to deceive, or if it's not genuine. I can tell you, if it's disingenuine, nobody's going to believe your brand. So, you know, you have to be, it has to be truth. And if not, you'll deceive for a while, but maybe not, but not for long. But I get where you're coming from on branding. So I don't know how else to say it. I mean, that's the thing that kind of resonates. That's the term that resonates. That's a term they use in business schools and marketing schools and all the rest. So I don't know if I can help you with that, but I think understanding what goes into the brand, you know, maybe can help, you know, overcome. I don't know how you overcome that. That's something personally you're going to have to do, because meeting with people in BMWs, that's totally fine, right? Like that could be part of the brand. I'm successful. I'm going to make you successful. So, I mean, that's.
I think your comment about it aligns people, so that, and it aligns people, and it aligns your messaging, and it aligns, it's sort of like, you know, your core values, your vision, mission, or whatever, right? It's something that's up front and saying, this is what we're about. And so, you know, everything's got to pass through this filter, right?
Yes.
And I think when you're trying to align people at a firm, if you've got a team, especially like for us at the, you know, on the board, we all have to we're all coming at this from different experiences, different companies that we work for, and we need to be aligned with, okay, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? So that promise works in that way. I like both of those kinds of concepts.
Yes, yes, and then combine that with a mission and vision that's compelling and meaningful, and you're off to the races.
Now, then you have our chapter.
Yeah, well, and, you know, the good thing about this is you have a lot more leash and a lot more room for error on vision, mission, and brand than you do on business, right? You make a business decision that's crappy, to go out of business. As long, you know, there are some limits, but you can afford some mistakes, especially when you're starting, on vision, mission, and brand. And that's important to know, that, you know, you shouldn't necessarily be afraid of it, because it's likely not going to hurt you. You know, people are going to see, tend to be forgiving, and I'm speaking, you know, mostly to the service in financial planning. I think you can get away with a little bit more there, because it's not something that people are used to seeing. But I do think that you have a lot more leash than making a bad business decision. Renting out a 40,000 square foot warehouse or office building when you're just starting out, it might derail your business before you get started.
Yeah, you don't want to pull a JCPenney's here and have too much retail space, you know. So.
Right.
Murray, when it comes to, you know, Mary shared some great stories as far as her background experience with, you know, branding and, you know, reaching out to a consultant. What would you say is, you know, good things to look for? You know, what kind of, you know, branding package kind of covers all the essentials if, you know, people in the planning world are looking to find and create their own kind of niche and, you know, market to that as well?
Well, and I talked about those at the beginning, right? So some sort of heart that you may or may not be able to get to. That was always the hardest part for me. The positioning, how you stack up versus your competitors in your space, and then a promise that fits in with your space that you can own. That's different than others. So Yeah, so those pieces, and then there's a personality element that can come with it, for sure. You could have somebody that has very similar promise. You wouldn't, but you could easily take a promise in a different direction just based on the personality that you want to associate with it. Like heartfelt could be, you know, very family and grounded and down to earth, or it could be very, you know, still modern and community and something else, right? You can take things in different directions simply with the personality, and then as well with target is something that's in there as well. It's not just the business, but it's what is your target? Who are you looking for? Have you defined them well? Does this message resonate with them? And a lot of time, that's why I like Molson, big budgets. Well, yeah, because we could go and test things and see if they resonated with the client or with the customers, with the consumers. We don't have that luxury, certainly not at the board or the FPA, and we locally, and we probably don't have that as a new financial planning firm work, you know, just starting out. So if you're lucky and you can do some of that research or get some confirmation that it resonates, great. If not, you know, but if you're purposeful when you begin, you're going to think about these things and you're going, you know, do I think this will resonate? And maybe you will go and do some more qualitative questions around it versus some quantitative direction about whether or not this resonates with folks. So, but that, you know, that's the whole alignment. And now, Craig, you know, probably coming from a law background and coming to the board, how has, you know, and living the brand a little bit and seeing that, do you have any comments or anything there that you can help share with coming from a typically non-brand or?
You know, it's interesting from my perspective. I've always been with large firms. And so my current law firm, DLA Piper, is in 40 countries around the world. We've got, I think by head count, the most lawyers of any law firm on the planet. And so the branding there's a machine behind that, and it's there. And the smaller but also large firms that I've been with also have their brand defined. So I come in as a professional to firms that already have the brand. With law, you know, you don't get, there probably are, you know, law firms of various sizes that have different brand statements and strategies that are kind of novel, but a lot of business law firms, it's about the quality, the efficiency, the product that you get, the scope and the reach and the depth of experience. And so in that industry, the brand really is selling the expertise and the ability to problem solve, work parties together and get transactions done. I haven't had to kind of go through the exercise of creating a brand necessarily in my professional life, the same way that I've done it with the rest of the board members on the board here. So it's been a really great experience being on the FPA Greater Phoenix board to go through these exercises and think about these things, like what, and we do a great job, I think, at our board meetings of regrounding ourselves, and especially the strategic planning around the brand message and around, you know, who are we? What is it that we're doing? What is it that we want to deliver? What are the measuring sticks that we hold ourselves accountable for, and how are we delivering on that? Those kinds of conversations don't happen every day at a law firm. There's a lot of thought that goes into it, and there definitely is buy-in by all the lawyers, but we don't necessarily make those kinds of decisions and think in those terms on a daily basis. So I've actually just really enjoyed the process of thinking about, we have a membership community and we have a wider community. What do we want to be to them, and how do we go about actually fulfilling that? It's had me thinking about those things more than I ever have, and it's a fun conversation to be in.
And Ted had asked a question as well, but I think it relates similar to what you're saying, Craig, with you know, different law firms, and how do you? It's not that it's competition, Ted. It's more that it's against. It's not. it's how are you different from your competition? And yes, you're right. If Craig's a securities lawyer and there's another Craig at another firm, it's how those firms have that emotional connection. Because Craig's skill set is one thing, and this other, I'll call him Jim's skill set, might be very similar. But then how you're differentiating yourself as that whole, so in law, it could be the stodgy old law firm, old money, or you might be holding yourself as the new modern tech law firm, you know, and that's where some of this difference goes. Skill set's probably the same, but who are you attracting? So part of that is, you know, how you would position yourself amongst everybody, and who are you going to target, and how are you going to go after them? So you're right, when you say medical or financial planning services, yes, we all kind of deliver a similar level, right? Probably within a band, but it's how are you going to do it that differentiates you from the next person that will make the difference. And if you can keep building on that, and there's a large enough target market that you've defined, you should be able to have some great success in your practice.
It's different than a niche. What you just made me realize is, like, if you listen to Kitsis, or if you read XY Planning Network, or if you go to all these conferences where they're trying to help you develop your niche, that's sort of a specialty. If I'm retirement income, or if I work with widows, or if I'm going to focus on divorce and financial planning, or families, you know, legacy planning, there's all kinds of niche markets, but that's not your brand. Your brand would be, who are you that would actually be attractive to that niche? So if I want retirement income planning for my niche, and I know the expertise I have to have, my brand is going to have to it's going to have to be pleasant and appealing to someone who is, you know, in their 50s at least, and of a certain net worth, or you know, transitioning into retirement. Like, I'm going to have to rethink beyond just a niche if I'm doing branding. It's much bigger than that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot more work, Murray.
Just as an example, the brand strategy document now goes into a lot more detail, but it's about 20 pages. Because I explain what each of these pieces were. You have to have brand strategy. And it's funny, I was going to bring the website up, but if you've been to the website, what you see on the website isn't the brand strategy, but it's an execution element of the strategy. So it made sense to develop our wheels, our ambition wheels, and our life cycle wheels. That made sense. But I bet you if we would have taken that to a graphic designer or some other designer, we would have had 2 or 3 at least, and they would have thought of more ways to represent what our brand promise is. But that's just the way that they do. That's the way that they think. But if you bring that brand strategy to them, then you're going to get real solid work. Because you can imagine, if they can think of 5 to 10 different ways to do something, when you give them a very concise definition of what it is that you want, they're going to be spinning their wheels if you don't. They're going to be able to think of hundreds of things.
So if our planners are ready to spend $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 on a website development, or a series of newsletters, or a social media strategy, that could be money down the drain that really doesn't differentiate you, doesn't reach your target market, and doesn't leave any equity. Or you could spend the time up front to develop your brand strategy, and then when you do invest in whatever your messaging channels are, you have a greater degree of confidence that it's going to work. Is that a fair assessment?
I would say so. I think it does. I mean, I think unfortunately without research, it's harder to tell. But yes, I mean, if you're purposeful behind something, and if that's where, I mean, that's one of the things that people always say, you know, go and find out what it is that you want to do that makes you happy, and then try to make money from it. So that's the brand. I think that's very similar. It's figure it out, and then go and see if it can work for you. Like I say, it's easier to do that with branding than with a business's decision. If you, again, with the 40, if you want to look like you're a big player in the market, it'd be a huge mistake right away. I'm not saying that anybody would do that, but just for illustration purposes, that there's a whole lot more risk in doing that than being purposeful about how you see yourself or how you want to position yourself against other financial planners, and then how are you going to deliver financial planning that's different and lives to that space.
And Murray, you shared a lot of good insight here. Obviously, just kind of a tease for what's to come. What should everyone kind of expect, as far as what they walk away with on top of what we're, kind of learning already from you today, if they were to join us next session?
I gave it all.
Gave it all away, huh? Got it all for free.
So what we'll do is there's kind of 3 areas. We'll go through the chapter. So we've invited other chapters to the workshop. So if we'll go through our chapter's brand strategy and the steps that we took, how we got there, so that you can get an appreciation for where the chapter is going, and then if you're from another chapter, you're going to get that benefit out of that. As you come as a practitioner or somebody from our chapter, you're going to see what it is that we're trying to accomplish and work towards. And then on top of that, then you're also going to get the structure and the way that you would go about developing a brand strategy for yourself. This is very membership organization driven, so it's not something that you could just plug and play into a practice. And so that's I would say, that's the first thing. And then you get me, I suppose, right? I went back into, it's been a while since I've been in branding. I mean, you see that from my resume, but it's something that I still do and think about all the time. But you get me, who's a financial planner in 2 countries. But me as a financial planner, as well as somebody that's done branding. So, I have that little bit extra that could say, well, this is the way that I would think about it. So we have those, and then I'm just going back. And then we also have at the strategic plan, we have a template for an executive summary of a strategic plan that's built on that. So I'll show our executive summary of the chapter's 5-year plan, and then how that all interweaves with the vision, mission, brand. So you'll have a lot of tools that you'll be able to go back and use. I also hope that you'll have knowledge and education. That's very much me. Even as a financial planner, I don't tell people what to do. I tell them their options and let them make informed decisions. I think most people are like that, but certainly that's the case. That's what I would like to be able to impart on people that come, is that if you do go out and engage, that you have some knowledge and better knowledge and see how this all might work. So before you go and spend 15, 20 grand on something, that you're purposeful and understanding what you're going to get and who might be good and who might not be as good as you go through things.
I think just because he's so quiet, Michael Fisher, for his benefit, or for just an example of how this is starting to live in the chapter, is when we did our homework, we realized that we had traditionally product education, if you will, for current financial planners. We didn't have a lot for people who weren't in the field yet, who were just considering financial planning. So sort of the awareness of financial planning as a profession, as a chapter, and as an industry, we had very little to offer them. And we had nothing for our alumni, past presidents like Michael Fisher, that talent, Neil Van Tuppen. There's so many we have that have been so much a part of our lives. And when they move into retirement and they're not as active anymore, there was nothing in the chapter for them. And so that brand strategy looked at, if we're there for you for your entire career, it would include activities and things of value from the moment you think about planning as a career to the time when you retired from your career. And so now all of that kind of set up, trying to figure out what our alumni might be interested in. And Michael Fisher and some others share a deep passion for pro bono work, for elevating the profession, for, leaving something to the profession. All right, well, now the chapter board and staff need to find a way to set some resources aside to develop solid dependable opportunities for alumni who want to do pro bono work to get back engaged in a meaningful way. It sort of lived that way. And that's how it happened. It wasn't by accident. And for Ken Osborne, who's an educator, you know, it's how are we going to provide opportunities for people who are capable of educating about financial planning to use the chapter as a tool to put themselves in a position to do what they want to do. It just made us think a lot bigger about what we might be doing with our time and money and your resources.
All goes full circle, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Perfect. Any other questions?
I feel like I just dropped the mic.
Yep.
Sorry, Aaron.
That's all right.
I didn't mean to do that.
Very well said. Any other questions from anyone joining us here today?
Eric, Ken had mentioned that, and he's right, that it is a different, like this is how you differentiate yourself is from your competition. It's certainly that. So kind of understand that because it is what makes you different. Apple is very different than Microsoft in where they were and who their targets were and you know, creativity versus numbers. So it's pretty easy to see some stark examples out there, and you know, I'm really going to try to have those conversations. One of the things that really was interesting when I was thinking about this and the workshop is, you know, when I see things on TV now, I see things completely different. Or if I see a campaign or I see marketing or I see branding, I see it all different because I see it through this lens, this analytical lens. And a lot of times I go back and say, what was the strategy? Or what was the brief that the strategist gave to that creative director or that copywriter? Because that's where it goes back to, or it should. And if it doesn't, then that's the first problem. And then the second is, I think you have a lot more, and I've used this before, a lot more leash on branding. If you have a strategy and you give a bad or good strategy to a bad copywriter, you probably still get decent stuff. If you give a bad strategy to a bad copywriter, you're going to get nothing. If you have no strategy, you know, what are you going to get? So, you know, that's what I think back to is unfortunately. So I might not be selling you on coming to the workshop because maybe, you know, ignorance is bliss, but that's the way that's the lens that I see a lot of marketing and a lot of branding behind, because marketing and branding isn't a logo and a tagline. That's way down the list when you get there. So
yeah,
I'll just
another go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just the idea that I think it was the 4-Hour Work Week. I can't remember his name.
Tim Ferriss.
Right.
Tim Ferriss. I love that book, and one of the things I thought was so fascinating, just this concept of, you know, speaking of niche, is to get, you know, if you can make it as narrow as possible, that really reduces the amount of cost in marketing. And I mean, I think, you know, everybody's doing marketing a different way. I mean, I think it's amazing to me that there are some planners who they're getting business from their blog. They're just putting their blog out on Facebook and they're getting clients that way. It's not how I market, but you know, in any case, you're going to be able to drive, you're going to be able to go to the right conferences, you know what the audience is going to be. And it just, so, I mean, I'm just kind of tagging on there, Murray, that it is not for everybody, because some people are just going to market by hanging out at the country club, or, you know, how do they pick? They don't have to do that. They don't care whether they're female or divorced or males, or they have children, or they're 85 years old and, you know, multi-generational. That may not be somebody that needs branding.
Well, and I'll frame that a different way as well then. If you don't have a brand, people are creating one for you. So you want them to create it, or do you want to create it?
Yeah. I like that.
Murray, not to put you on the spot or anything, but, you know, mention some good examples of good branding. Can you mention an example of, you know, perhaps poor branding in a company that's, you know, no longer around, or is kind of, you know, slid into obscurity based on bad branding?
Because a lot of times it can deal with bad business decisions. But I can tell you who has to work very hard to get their brand equity built back up, but Volkswagen, right? German engineering of Volkswagen. And then to falsify research to suggest that, you know, your German engineering is getting the mileage that's needed, bad news. So they went into full crisis mode. And they have a lot of work to do to build that brand back up into.
Who was that, Murray?
Volkswagen.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they had a branding problem. If you're old enough, they had a branding problem to begin with, given where they came from. But if you know the history of Volkswagen, that is.
Good point.
Yeah. I think Wells Fargo is another one that comes to mind as far as, you know,
Sure.
I don't see quite as much of it today, but I know post, you know, their big news stories, there's a lot of feel-good commercials and, you know, working in the industry, it's like, come on, you guys got a, you know, long ways to go before you convert me back to, you know, being a Wells Fargo supporter. But, yeah, another one.
It takes a long
That's kind of to Ted's point, where branding was being used to deceive.
Yes.
It was clearly different than what their actions would, their brand
Yes,
promise
so-
wasn't held up.
That's right. So they probably had some nice touchy-feely brand, but then their sales practices were way offline compared to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then that's where this disconnect comes. And if you have that, it's easy to make decisions. And Colleen, it's really interesting. At some point, we should have a deeper conversation, but you bringing A, employers together with A, employees, this is one way, right? It's because it's very easy. If you have a well-articulated brand and promise, then it's very easy for them to understand when you're, you know, are you an A or not? Because if you're not living your vision, mission, and brand, then you're probably not going to be an A employer either. And Aaron, you asked about what makes a brand. I don't know what makes a bad brand necessarily, but I can say that you also, you can see it in shortcuts. So everything that we talked about here are shortcuts, the easy way out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to denigrate what any work that you do. Right, you got to get sales targets again. I mean, you know, there's a lot of talk about public companies and this quarterly view of profits, right? And this competition between consumers and shareholders and companies and what they have to do. But it takes a long time to build a brand. When I was in Canada, I mean, Budweiser was a huge, ubiquitous, worldwide brand, but in Alberta, where I'm from, and it was small, but they kept at it, and kept the message the same. And, you know, when I lost track of any of my colleagues in the industry, it was #1 brand. And,
Wow.
and so it takes a long time to get there. But if they were to cut corners and do some other things, they could easily take that out right away. They could lose a lot of that equity right away.
Perfect. Well, I think that was, you know, a kind of a nice touch on what's to come here. I think we'll wrap things up a little bit, you know, right before the hour mark here, Murray, but I'm curious to see, you know, who you're most looking forward to hearing from as well when it comes to the prequel here on the 29th.
Right. And that's a tough one. It is a great lineup. So I have to answer that question, I think, by process of elimination. So I'm going to go to mine. So I can't go to Melissa's, and I've also had, but I've had some experience with dynamic governance, and I can tell you that dynamic governance is a really, really great thing. It really resonates with me. So maybe there's some confirmation bias, but I love it, but it has helped in the boardroom, and you know, maybe just a shake of the head, Pauline and Craig. I think you would agree that this has been a real changer in our boardroom. So just if you want to know a different way of how to be strategic and to move things forward with a diverse group of people, it's a great governance model. Everybody gets a say, and I would want to go do it more because I've only had the one training, you know, and I'm trying to do as best I can in my role to live it. But it's not something that is overnight, and there's a lot to learn. But if you understand the concepts, so I would say Melissa's is great if that's where you wanted to head. And then Matt with advocacy, he's doing a great job. That team is just so solid, and the stuff that we've done with the chapter, that's great. And I've been fortunate, so I've been involved there as well, and so not by default, because I think there's so much value in this Colby stuff, and that Colleen's going to be doing. So that's where I'm going. I'm in the afternoon. I'm going to Colleen.
Okay.
I got to take the Colby beforehand, and I think there's links for me to do that, right, Colleen? I get a special rate, $44 or something, to take the Colby before, so I'm all prepared. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. That's the wholesale price.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I think that was somewhat of a cop-out answer, but I think, you know, we all are excited to hear from everyone, so we'll let it slide. And I'm glad you didn't slight Colleen there as you closed out here as well.
No, that's where I'm going.
Perfect. Any final questions here before we close things down today from anyone?
You can ask Murray anything. I always like to try and zing him, but he's unzingable. But give it a shot. Ken, you've been so quiet.
I'm tempted to ask
Perfect.
you to play some Freebird or something like that, but pick up that guitar. But might be for a different conversation.
You know,
he could sing us out.
I've been playing with that. But I'm so old now that I don't know if anybody would recognize any of the stuff that I would play. So yes, I do have some Leonard Skinner on my on my plan to play. But yeah, I would love to do that, and I'm really trying to figure out a way to incorporate it.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Another good question is, you know, when this virtual world starts to fade away, when are we doing a little FPA music event here, and we'll have you put the band together for us?
Well, it's funny. Yeah, I would love to have a financial planning association of Greater Phoenix band that, you know, if we go to national conference or retreat or something like that and play a little. Sure thing.
Does anybody else on the call have any musical talent? You guys going to join in?
My guitar just clutched up.
And not admitting to it.
I mean, I could probably do the triangle or tambourine or something like that. You know?
Cowbell.
Kazoo.
Need more.
I found out today that my dog will howl if you play the harmonica. My brother just got one. He's, you know, hanging out with us for the week, and it's pretty entertaining. So there you go.
I can sing in the shower, but I try not to do it in public too much.
That's fair. Perfect. Well, appreciate everyone for joining us here today. Thanks so much. We hope to see you here in less than 2 weeks' time on the 29th at the pre-poll showcase here. And, you know, look forward to having you on next month as well as we welcome Cassie Fernandez for a conversation with Next Gen. So thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday and enjoy the cooler weather out here.
Yeah. Well done, Aaron.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate
But
it.
it's nice to see you all.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
Bye, have fun.